I'm Joe Bev, and this is the Joe Bev Show. This time on the Joe Bev Show, Rabbit's Full Warren, Mr. Horsefly's Prairie Post Office, John Wayne as the son of General Custer, Abbott and Costello talk economics, and Brute Ballingham, Chapter 7, Treble is My Business. All that and more coming up on the Joe Bev Show. But first, the Grumpy Tree. There once was a grumpy tree.
Stop looking at my leaves. Haven't you ever seen a tree before?
It was the biggest tree in the forest, and it didn't need its shadow for anything.
Mr. Tweed, may we come out of the sun and share your shadow?
No, go away, little bunny rabbit.
However, the tree would never share its shadow with any of the animals, wouldn't let them come anywhere near.
Go away before I hit you with my branches.
One year, the autumn and winter were terrible.
Brrr! I'm one cold tree. Without my leaves, it's so cold I may surely die. Brrr!
One day, a little girl who lived with her grandmother that winter found the shivering tree.
I'm one cold tree.
I'll help you, Mr. Tree. I'll go home and get you a big scarf.
So the little girl went home and got a great big scarf to warm the tree up. As she approached the tree, the spirit of the forest appeared.
Little girl, why that tree is so grumpy that no one will help him.
Even so, I'm going to put the scarf on him to keep him warm.
And so the girl put the big scarf on the tree.
Thank you, little girl.
You're welcome, tree.
The tree survived, and by the next spring had learned from the girl's generosity. And when she sat down next to the trunk, the tree bent down to shade her from the sun.
Have some of my shade, little girl.
Thank you, tree.
The spirit of the forest saw this and went to tell the other animals.
All you creatures of the woods, from now on, you will be able to shade yourself well, because the tree has learned that having kind and generous beings around makes the world a better place in which to live.
West is next on The Joe Bev Show.
The Full Warren. Once, a rabbit built a fantastic warren where he lived very happily. He had designed it so well that when a great rainstorm arrived, which flooded nearly the whole wood and the homes of many of the animals, his remained untouched. Soon, one after another, the homeless animals came to his door.
Mr. Rabbit, can I please come in? My hole is filled with water.
Please! I was living under a roof, but it was washed away.
Oh, the pile of brush that was once my home floated down to the creek, then down to the river, and out to sea. May I come stay with you in your warren for the winter?
I was living in a hollow tree trunk, but it filled with wet sand and dirt, and I need a new home.
I was sleeping under a pile of logs when a mudslide took them away. Can I spend the winter here at your warm warren? Well, gee, come on in. My home is your home.
He invited each visitor in, and gradually the warren filled up until there was no room left. This discomfort didn't bother the rabbit, well, because he felt he was being generous. One day in the spring, when all the animals had returned to their old homes, the rabbit was hopping along so absent-mindedly that, he didn't realize that a lynx was lying in wait for him. One of the animals who had spent the winter in the rabbit's warren saw this.
Hey, Rabbit! Hey, Rabbit, my friend! Come quick! Take shelter in my home! The lynx will not get you in here!
Make my day. Make my day.
The lynx destroyed that home, but the rabbit managed to escape and run to hide in the home of another friend.
Gee, let me in! The lynx is after me! Come on in, Rabbit, come on in. The lynx won't get you in here.
Make my day.
Gee, can I come in? The lynx is on my tail, and I need a rest on my way home.
Sure, Rabbit, come on in. The lynx won't get you inside here. Make my day.
For the whole day, the lynx followed the rabbit, burrow to burrow, cave to cave, but the rabbit always managed to save his skin. Helped all the time by the friends he had offered shelter to in the winter.
Gee, I feel enormously happy. You know, not only having escaped the lynx, but also at having made so many friends in the forest. Well, thanks to my own original generosity. Gee, it's good to be safe and warm.
Make my day.
Mr. Horsefly was the new head of the Prairie Post Office. He had put a lot of time and effort into getting this highly respected position. He had even moved fields. If you asked Mr. Horsefly, he would tell you that he got the job thanks to his great deductive gifts. On his first day of work, he opened up shop, and into the post office came Mr. Beetle, Mrs. Spider, Miss Mantis, and Mr. Grasshopper. Mr. Horsefly wouldn't let them so much as open their mouths.
"Ah, yes, don't tell me. I bet I can work out what each of you came for,"
he said, putting a book, a plastic mat, a nail file, and some protective goggles on the counter.
"Now let's see. The nail file would be for Mrs. Spider, without a doubt. With all the scratching she does, she'll need to put her nails right. The mat,"
he went on, without giving anyone time to react,
without even having to think about it, I give it to Mr. Grasshopper, since he must have to train pretty hard to keep all his hopping about to a decent standard. The safety goggles have to be for Mr. Beetle, because having to spend all day with his face so close to the ground, he'll be needing something to protect his eyes. Ah, yes, and finally, this big book here has to be a Bible. I'll have to give that to Miss Praying Mantis, whom I would like to ask to include me in her latest supplications to the Almighty. As you will see..."
They didn't let him finish. The comment about the mantis, well known on the prairie for having changed her name from Miss Praying Mantis to simply Miss Mantis, was just too much for everyone, and they burst out laughing.
Not much of a detective, are you?
said Mr. Grasshopper between chuckles.
For a start, Mrs. Spider came for the book. She's very quiet and doesn't scratch a soul. The mat is for Mr. Beetle, who likes to sunbathe in his swimming pool and do it lying on his back. Miss Mantis will, of course, want the nail file. She's a bit of a flirt, you know. And the protective goggles are for me. I'm not as young as I was, and I don't see so well. These days when I'm hopping on the grass, I get the odd black eye.
"Aha!"
Mr. Horsefly interrupted, recovering a little bit from his embarrassment.
"Well, then you do, in fact, hop on grass."
Yes, I do,
answered the grasshopper.
But as you will see, making your deductions based simply on prejudice leads to more misses than hits.
How right he was. Just a few days later, after having met all the insects in person, Mr. Horsefly had a good laugh while telling this story about his deductions made from prejudice without yet having met a soul. He understood that judging without knowing is a practice for fools.
It was already late afternoon, and the gas lamps of the boulevard were being lighted for Paris, or at least for Paris in summer, by a somewhat frigid-looking animal. When Philip Custer came to the end of his letter, he hesitated for an instant, wrote "your," then crossed that out and substituted "sincerely." No, deciding the first ending with its "as is," or rather as ordinarily is, the case in hymnal epistles, somewhat possessive sense, would no longer suffice.
Yours truly,
Perhaps.
sincerely,
Better, but certainly not.
your husband.
He was done, thank God, with pretenses. Philip sipped his absinthe and gazed for an instant through the cafe window. A solitary fiancé rattled by. He picked up the result of his afternoon's labor wearily.
Dear Mary,
He read,
when I told you that my employers were sending me to Paris, I lied to you. It was perhaps the first direct lie that I ever told you. It was, I know now, the last. But a falsehood by word of mouth mattered really very little in comparison with the enormous lie that my life with you had become.
Philip paused and smiled, somewhat bitterly, at the point in the letter. Mary, with her American woman's intuition, would undoubtedly surmise that he had run off with Mrs. Everett. There was a certain ironical humor in the fact that Mary's mistaken guess would be sadly indicative of her whole failure to understand what her husband was, to use a slang expression, driving at.
I hope that you will believe me when I say that I came to Paris to paint. In the past 4 years, the desire to do that has grown steadily until it has mastered me. You do not understand. I found no one in America who did. I think my mother might have, had she lived. Certainly it is utterly incomprehensible to my father.
Philip stopped. Ah, there was the rub. General Custer, and all that he stood for. Philip glimpsed momentarily those early boyhood days with his father, spent mainly in army posts, the boy's cavalry uniform, in which he had ridden old Bess about the camp, waving his miniature saber, the day he had been thrown to the ground by a strange horse which he had disobediently mounted, just as his father arrived on the scene. Philip had never forgotten his father's words that day.
Don't crawl, son. Don't whine. It was your own fault this time, and you deserve what you got. Lots of times it won't be your fault, but you'll have to take your licking anyway. But remember, son, take your medicine like a man. Always. Always.
Philip groaned. He knew what the general would say when the news of his son's desertion of his wife and 4-year-old boy reached him. He knew that he could never explain to his father the absolute torture of the last 4 years of enervating domesticity and business mediocrity. The torture of the beauty within him crying for expression, half satisfied by the stolen evenings at the art school, but constantly growing stronger in its all-consuming appeal. No, life to his father was a simple problem in army ethics, a problem in which duty was A, one of the unknown factors X. The unknown was either bravery or cowardice when brought in contact with A. Having solved this problem, his father had closed the book of the higher mathematics, and especially of those complex problems to which no living man knew the final answer. He had no conception. And yet... Philip resumed his reading to avoid the old endless maze of subtleties.
It's not that I did not or do not love you. It is rather that something within me is crying out, something which is stronger than I, and which I cannot resist. I have waited 2 years to be sure.
Yesterday, as soon as I reached here, I took my work to the man who is considered the finest art critic in Paris. He told me that there was a quality to my painting which he had seen in that of no living artist. He told me that in 5 years of hard work, I should be able to produce work which Botticelli would be proud to have done. Do you understand that, Mary? Botticelli! But no, forgive me. My pang of joy comes strangely in a letter, which should be abject humility for what must seem to you, to father, to all, a cowardly, selfish act of desertion, a whining failure to face life. Oh, dear, dear Mary, if you could but understand what a hell I have been through.
Philip took his pen and crossed out the last line so that no one could read what had been there.
Materially, of course, you and little George will be better off. The foolish pride with which I refused to let your parents help us now no longer stands in their way. You should have no difficulty about a divorce. You can dispose of my things as you see fit. There is nothing I care about keeping, which I did not bring. Again, Mary, I cannot ask you to forgive or even to understand, but I do hope that you will believe me when I say that this act of mine is the most honest thing I have ever done, and I have acted out of the tragi-comedy in the part of a happy, contented husband, would have made both of our lives a bitter, useless farce. Sincerely, Philip.
He folded the pages and addressed the envelope.
Pardon, monsieur.
A whiff of sulfur came to his nose as the waiter bent over the table to light the gas above him.
Would monsieur like to see the journal? There is a most amusing story about... the bill, monsieur? Yes, in a moment.
Philip glanced nervously through the pages of the Temps. He was anxious to get the letter to the post, to have done with the indecision and worry. It would have been a blessed relief when the thing was finally done beyond the chance of recall. Why couldn't that stupid waiter hurry? On the last page of the newspaper was an item headlined, "Recent News from America." Below was a subheading,
Horrible massacre of soldiers by Indians. Brave stand of American troopers.
He caught the name Custer and read,
And by his brave death at the hands of the Indians, this gallant American general has made the name of Custer one which will forever be associated with courage of the highest type.
He read it all through again, and then sat quietly as the hand of Polymathus closed over him. He smiled a little, a weary, ironic smile.
Monsieur desires something more, perhaps?
The waiter held out the bill. Philip smiled.
No, monsieur has finished. There is nothing more.
Then he repeated slowly,
There is nothing more.
Philip watched his son George blow out the 12 candles on his birthday cake.
Mother,
Said George.
when I get to be 18, can I be a soldier like grandfather up there?
He pointed to the portrait of Philip's father in uniform, which hung in the dining room.
Of course you can, dear.
Said his mother.
But you must be a brave boy.
Grandfather was awful brave, wasn't he, Father?
This from little Mary, between mouthfuls of cake.
Yes, Mary,
Philip answered.
he was very, very brave.
Of course he was.
Said George.
He was an American.
Yes,
Answered Philip.
that explains it. He was an American.
Mrs. Custer looked up at the portrait of her distinguished father-in-law.
You know, Philip, I think it must be quite nice to be able to paint a picture like that. I've often wondered why you never kept up your art.
The Old West on The Joe Bev Show. Coming up on The Joe Bev Show, Brute Ballingham, Private Detective, The Excruciating Hello, Chapter 7, Treble is My Business. But first...
Well, I just got off the phone, Costello.
What about, Abbott?
I finally found a job in Hurleyville, New York.
What do you need a job for, Abbott?
What do I need a job for? Well, you don't work. I gotta work for the both of us.
I'd work, Abbott, but there's nothing I'm qualified for. I'm unemployable.
That's where you're wrong. You may be out of work, but you're not unemployed.
Come again.
The unemployment rate is at 9%, right?
That's a lot of people out of work, Abbott.
No, that's 16%.
You just said 9%.
9% unemployed.
Right, 9% out of work.
No, that's 16%.
Okay, so it's 16% unemployed.
No, that's 9%.
Wait a minute. Is it 9% or 16%?
9% are unemployed, 16% are out of work.
But if you're out of work, you are unemployed.
No, you can't count the out of work as unemployed. You have to look for work to be unemployed.
But they are out of work.
No, Lou, you missed the point.
What point?
Somebody who doesn't look for work cannot be counted with those who look for work. It wouldn't be fair.
To who?
The unemployed.
But they are all out of work.
No, the unemployed are actively looking for work. Those who are out of work stopped looking. They gave up. And if you give up, you are no longer in the ranks of the unemployed.
So if you're off the unemployment rolls, that would count as less unemployment?
Absolutely. Unemployment would go down.
Unemployment just goes down because you don't look for work?
Absolutely. It goes down. That's how you get to 9%. Otherwise, it would be 16%. You don't want to read about 16% unemployment, do you?
That would be frightening.
Absolutely.
Wait a minute, Abbott. I got a question for you. That means there's two ways to bring down the unemployment numbers?
Two ways, correct.
Unemployment can go down if somebody gets a job.
Correct.
And unemployment can also go down if you stop looking for work.
Bingo.
So there are two ways to bring unemployment down, and the easier of the two is to just stop looking for work.
Now you're thinking like an economist.
So I'm out of work.
No, you're not out of work.
I'm unemployed?
You're not unemployed. You work for me.
I work for you, Abbott? I thought we was a team.
That's right, we are. 50% of what I make, I give to you. I find the jobs, and I bring you along, don't I? Don't I always take care of you? I make $2 a day, you make $1 a day. It's very simple.
I make $1 a day?
Certainly.
Where's my $365, Abbott? For last year's work?
What do you mean? I've been holding it for you. You don't know how to spend your money.
I haven't had a chance to learn. You know, there are 365 days in a year.
Well, yeah, I know that.
And if I'm working for you, you owe me a whole year's salary.
Now, wait a minute.
365 days, $365, you owe me $1 a day, Abbott.
Now, wait a minute. Let's straighten this out.
Pay up, pay up.
You say you work 365 days for me, and you want to be reimbursed.
Look, I don't want to burst anything. I just want you to give me my money. $365.
Okay, look, now, don't get excited. Don't get excited. Take it easy. Now listen. Now, how many hours a day did you work?
8 hours a day.
And how many hours are there in a day?
Look now, Abbott, don't try to put anything over on me. There's 24 hours in a day. All but February, which has 28.
You're absolutely right. There are 24 hours in a day. But by working 8 hours, you only really worked 1/3 of each day. Isn't that right?
That's according to the way you figure it.
Well, 1/3 of 365 is $121. So you only actually have $121 coming to you. That's the way I reckon it.
You sure are wrecking it. Come on, give it up. Give me the dough.
Well, you did have $121 coming, but...
I knew there was a but in there somewhere.
But you didn't work Sundays, did you?
No, I had to take off to wash my lingerie.
All right. There are 52 Sundays in a year. Deduct 52 from $121, which leaves $69 coming to you.
You sure of that?
Positive.
You see, Abbott, I don't want you to cheat yourself.
That's mighty nice of you to look out for my interests.
I may as well look out for yours. You already wrecked mine. Come on, Abbott, give me the money. Give up something, will you?
All right. I'd be glad to give you the $69, but...
Here we go again. Look, Abbott, give me a couple of dollars. How's that?
Well, you must admit that you only worked half a day on Saturday. Isn't that right, partner?
Partner? Now I'm losing money. I'm a partner? Look, will you give me $1? I'll settle. Give me a half a buck.
Now, wait a minute. Just a second. Just a minute. Now, where was I?
You just had a toehold on my $69.
Oh, yes. Half $1 a day on Saturdays, 52 Saturdays in a year. 1/2 of 52 is 26, so we will deduct 26 from 69, leaving you the sum of $43.
Sum of?
Yes, sum of.
If I get some of it, I'll be lucky. Look, Abbott, give me a quarter. Will you let me have a quarter? Give me 20 cents.
Well, now, wait a minute.
I deserve to get something.
Now, wait a minute, just a minute. There's still a balance of $43. But...
Stop button. You're getting my goat.
But you took 2 weeks vacation, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's 14 days. Take 14 from $43, leaving you an exact sum of $29.
Look, Abbott, will you give me a dime? Is that asking too much? One little itty-bitty dime? Will you give me anything?
Well, I'd give you $29,
but I know it as good as you do.
How much time did you take off for lunch?
Oh, this is going to run into money. I took off 1 hour a day.
Very well. 365 hours is equal to 15 days, I take it.
You might as well take it. You've taken everything else. Go ahead.
15 from 29 leaves 14.
But now I know it better than you. Look, Abbott, will you give me something? Will you give me a nickel?
What do you mean?
Give me 4 pennies.
What do you mean, give you 4 pennies?
Look, can you spare a biscuit, a cracker, a crumb? Maybe you could spare a mothball.
A mothball?
Look, give me a sardine. Go ahead.
Now, just a minute. Let's straighten this thing out. There are 13 holidays in a year which you didn't work, and you only have $14 coming to you. We deduct 13 from the 14, leaving you the exact sum of $1. Here you are, my friend, and good luck to you.
Nice work, Abbott. I need money. And all you give me is $1. I worked for you for a year, and all you give me is $1.
Well, let's not talk about it anymore.
$1 measly after I worked and slaved for you for a whole year.
I always pay my obligations. Here's your $1.